What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Happy May to all of you. It is May 1st here where I am recording, and of course that means that we are going to be filming what I read in the month of April. That being said, I just wanted to say before I jump into the video, thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor to be able to share this joy and appreciation of my fiction addiction with all of you guys. So definitely such an honor to have you guys here. And wherever you are, morning, evening, or night, this is going to be a slightly longer one because I did get through quite a few books this past month. So definitely grab a beverage of your choice, whether it be a coffee, a water, a wine, a beer, whatever floats your boat. Now is the time to go grab it. For those of you that are new here, my name is Jaya. I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday on bookish related content. And if you have a fiction addiction, you're definitely in the right place because pretty much any genre I will be reading. Every once in a while, I do memoirs or nonfiction, but for the primary component of this channel, it is primarily fiction. For those of you that are returning, once again, thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me to be building this community with you guys, and I can't thank you enough for your support and for being here. And with that, let's jump into the video. So this month's theme, if you will, was young adult books, and I did actually have quite a few books on my TBR. I did manage to get through almost all of them. There's one book that I did not read on the TBR because I realized it was not actually part of the series that I thought it was a part of. It's actually its own separate series within the same world. And only the first book has been released in that series. The second book will be coming out later this year. So I figured if the next book in the series is so close by, then I would rather wait and read the two books together. And that is Miss Jennifer Lynn Barnes' secondary series that's adjacent to the Inheritance games, but it's the grandest game and the books coming after that. So I did end up reading the collection of novellas though, which was Games Untold. So let's start with that. So as many of you may know, Jennifer Lynn Barnes is a very popular young adult fiction author. She wrote a bunch of different series. You can see here on my shelf some of the series of hers that I have collected. The top 4 books in this corner right here on the 4th shelf is the Naturals series. That series is actually following a bunch of kids who basically get recruited by the FBI to help solve cold cases because they grew up in environments that force them to hone a 6th skill, if you will, a 6th sense. And that allows them to help think in a different way and crack otherwise cold cases that the active FBI may have been unable to solve. And then on the bottom is the Inheritance games. So that has a total of 4 books. And the first 3 books are like continued story with all the same characters. The 4th book, The Hawthorne Brothers, is more about 2 brothers and our main female lead character and their journeys. And then Games Untold is, again, another compilation of small short stories that have been put together and are basically just little novellas of things that are happening within the story that we may not have gotten details on, or preludes to what may have happened without details. So it's just another way to tie a bow on the series. I personally really enjoyed this book. I love the Hawthorne brothers. I think they're absolutely adorable. I think they're eccentric, they're funny, they're crazy, and they deserve every dime of their billionaire lifestyle because they've earned it. I also love Avery. I think Avery is just such a strong female lead character as well. And I think the fact that in this book you also get the story of Hannah and Toby is excellent. Like, that was a wonderful storyline to read. I loved reading about Nash, the older brother, and his love story. I really enjoyed the story about what Christmas looks like at the Hawthorne house and the games that are basically going on there, where essentially it's still a challenge and it's still, you know, testing their limits, but it's all about the love. So there's just so many fun stories in this, and this book honestly had me smiling the entire time I was reading it, except for one part which was a little bit sad, but even then that had a redeeming arc as well. So I did end up giving this book 4 stars, and that did help me officially say that I have now completed the Inheritance series. Now, while I was on my journey with Jennifer Lynn Barnes, I realized that she had actually written another series that I've never heard about, never seen talked about on the internet, And for those of you who are Jennifer Lynn Barnes fans, you may actually find yourself wanting to pick these up. Now, because I did read so many series, I do have individual series reviews for each of these different books. So I am not going to be going into too much detail with these books, but essentially this is following the story of a young woman who is 18. Her mom and her are all there are, and her mom is estranged from her family. Think very Gilmore Girls in that regard. And her maternal grandmother's side of the family are actually billionaires and super rich and in the world of the debutante balls and all that kind of stuff. But her mom decided to separate from that when she ran away with her daughter while she was pregnant, and has since been raising her child on her own. The mom is a little erratic, a little bit crazy. So, she's not the best mother, but she definitely loves her daughter very much. And currently she's gallivanting around the world when her daughter is approached by her grandmother, and she says, hey, if you come and do this debutante gig with me, well then I will in turn give you a bunch of money to basically go to any college you want, make sure your future is set. And she's like, back and forth about it. Like, obviously it's the deal of a lifetime, but the cherry on top is when she says, by the way, if you do come for these balls, you may also have a chance of figuring out who your actual father is. And that's kind of what cinches it. This book series starts with Little White Lies, and it's absolutely great. She meets a bunch of characters. She meets family members, half siblings, all kinds of interesting things in this book. This book is also great. The second book basically takes place at a lake. They find a dead body. There's secret societies that are happening in this that they're trying out for. Family drama that's happening. History that's being revealed. Twins that we never knew about showing up. So very, very young adult, very, very The Lying Game and Gilmore Girls and Pretty Little Liars combined together. So if that sounds like it is up your alley, definitely consider checking out this series as well. This is called the Debutante series, once again written by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I gave this series a solid 3.5 stars. The first book was a 3-star read for me. The second book was a 4-star read for me. Okay, let's talk about the Renegades series next. I'm obsessed with this series. I did not know that I was a sci-fi girly until I really got into some of these books, which is what makes me super excited for this upcoming month's book selection, because they are all within the realm of sci-fi. Now, these books, I think, were absolutely delicious. This is by an author named Marissa Meyer. You may have heard of before if you've read The Lunar Chronicles, which is basically the series that has like Cinder, which essentially what she's done is she's taken a bunch of fairy tales, from my understanding, and rewritten them in a modern age and with technology involved in the storyline. And it's essentially like Cinder is like Cinderella, but with a slight twist to it and things like that. I know they have rave reviews. So when I found out that she wrote this series, this one spoke to me a little bit more. So I think I got cut off because there was a phone call that came in the middle there. I'm so sorry, but we were talking about the Renegades series. So the premise of the Renegades series is basically there's a world that has normal humans, and then something happened where now we have individuals with supernatural powers as well, or as we would say, villains and superheroes. Now in the beginning, everybody was a villain because the normal humankind did not know how to adjust to individuals with superheroes in their society. And then within the world of superheroes, a bunch of things happens, and now we have demarcations between villains and superheroes. Superheroes being the ones that want quote unquote peace for everyone and equality for everyone, and they want to basically stop crime. And then we have the villains who feel like they deserve to exist and humankind should accept them at their best, and they deserve to live freely. Now, within this world of villains and supervillains, eventually it turns out that as the main story starts, because of a bunch of murder, mayhem, gang wars, things like that, we have two main groups that remain. We have the Renegades, who are basically the council of superheroes that make sure that the world is safe. They take care of humans and superheroes alike. And then you have the villains, who are considered the anarchists or other like small gang members that are basically running around just trying to survive, but don't necessarily believe that they want to be a part of the Renegades, or quote unquote are not qualified enough to be a part of the Renegades. who are just trying to survive in normal society. Now, the anarchists in particular are out to basically take the Renegades down, and that is the culture and the world from which Miss Nova comes. Nova is our main female lead character. Her uncle has been killed in the process of all of the wars that happened, and she's basically seeking vengeance for her family, and she's very upset with the Renegades because when she needed them, they were not there to help. And vice versa, you have the council members on the Renegade team, and they're just looking out to basically eradicate all of these threats. And Adrian is our main lead male character. His goal is to essentially ensure that the Renegades are successful while also coming up with new creative innovations that allow him to do more for that cause. And then you have the blending that starts to occur between these two characters' lives. That's all I'm going to say about this. Like I said, I have more in detail series reviews coming up for each of these series. So if that sounds intriguing, definitely check out that upcoming video as well. But I would say in general, Renegades, the first book, solid 3.5 stars for me. Excellent, excellent book. The second book in the series is Arch Enemies. This book is also quite amazing. I love the fact that they really explore more into the world of the super villains and superheroes, and they also talk more about various concoctions, technologies that are being developed, questioning whether or not someone has the right or the power to pull the things that they're pulling. And I like the fact that Nova is kind of becoming more conscientious of the different sides as well. I also love the romance between her and Adrian that's brewing in this. This is a closed door romance situation. Obviously nothing crazy is going to happen. It's young adult, but the banter, the story, the sweetness of it all is very, very precious in this, and that made it a 4-star read for me. And then Supernova is kind of the culmination of everything that's happening. You know, allegiances change, people are revealed for their true identities, you know, lots of forgiving, lots of betrayals, all kinds of crazy things happen in this book. This just moves so fast paced, and it was such a good book, and this was a solid 5-star. So I would say that this series kind of ended up being a solid 4-star read for me. Would definitely recommend it, and I absolutely adored this series. I do see myself potentially reading more Marissa Meyer in the future. The next series that I read, and again, every single series does have its own video, so don't be like alarmed if I'm not giving too much detail. But the next series that I read was the Scythe series. Now, this is by Neil Shusterman. These books are also incredible, and it's basically talking about this idea that the world is divided by regular humans and the Scythedom. So in the regular human world, people have now overcome death. There are nanites that are basically inside of the bloodstream and things like that allow humans to live for longer periods of time and basically allows them to reset their age as needed. And because of these metabolites that they have, they are not dying anymore. The Thunderhead is an overlying AI system that basically acts as the conscience for humankind across the world. Its primary focus is making sure that humankind succeeds, and it also acts in the benefit of all humankind. So basically it just approaches everything with love. It doesn't really have traits of betrayal or anger or things like that. So it's a good AI system, we'll say. And then the only group of which it cannot interfere is the Scythedom. The Scythedom is basically created for population control because, as you can imagine, if the world continues to produce new children but no one dies, eventually resources will run out. So the Scythedom was basically created to make conscientious individuals have the utmost power and the utmost honor of being able to take the life of another. They are supposed to do this in a very, very kind, non-biased way based on whether or not a person is providing to society anymore and whether it's appropriate to take their life. Once someone's life has been taken, you give immunity to the rest of their family, so that family cannot have more than one death per year. Within this process, in the Scythedom itself, you have the New Order Scythes and the Old Scythes. The Old Scythes believe in this honorable system. The New Order Scythes believe that gleaming should be a joy. Gleaming is what they call death or taking someone's life, and that it is an honor that is bestowed upon them that they should enjoy, like everyone enjoys their vocation or their job. So their thing is, if I want to kill more, you should let me kill more, because there are other Scythes that may not want to kill as much, and this is how we have balance. Essentially, egotistical maniac murderer that's trying to basically take on power within this series. That character's name is Goddard. He's the main villain throughout this series. He's basically a psychopathic or sociopathic, narcissistic like murderer who just wants power. So it's a very interesting series to read. Now within this, you're also following two other main characters who are Citra and Rowan. Citra and Rowan basically come on as apprentices to one of the most respected Scythes within the kingdom, Scythe Faraday, and they're learning from him. And then among the midst of everything that's happening, and during one of the Scythe trials, they basically end up in a position where they're being forced to separate. And Rowan is forced under the apprenticeship of Goddard, while Citra is sent to Scythe Marie Curie. So when this is happening, you get to see the Scythedom from their perspective and what it looks like to change the system from the inside versus being a renegade on the outside. So I do think overall this series was very powerful and moving. For me, Scythe itself was a solid 4-star read. Thunderhead was a 4-star read. The Toll, which is the culmination of the whole story, was a 4.5. And then Gleanings, which is basically just a short novella of other stories within the Scythedom that we didn't get to see in the other books but are referred to. This book was a solid 3-star read for me. Overall, I would say the series is a 4-star series. It's excellent. It definitely makes you think. And I do think it's a very, very powerful series to read should you be interested in looking into that series. Okay, so I ended up taking a little break from when I was filming earlier, which is why there's a sudden change in outfit in the middle of this video. But continuing on with the April reads, so obviously we talked a little bit about Renegades and Scythe, the Scythedom series already. The next series that I read in the young adult collection of books for this month of April was the Powerless series. Now specifically, this series is also what made it so that this month was dedicated to young adults for me, because I realized the final book in this series was releasing this month, and Powerless has taken the internet by storm and has been a sensation that has been talked about everywhere I've turned and looked over the course of the past 2 years. So I was like, I must and I shall read this series. So let's talk a little bit about it. Again, all of these series I have done individual series reviews for, so there are more detailed thoughts that I provide, as well as more information on the storyline and all that kind of stuff in those videos. But basically the gist of this world is that there are a group of individuals who have elite powers. This occurred because of a plague that basically ran through the entire district, or kingdom actually is a better word for it. And in its return, it left a bunch of people dead. It left a bunch of people, quote unquote, normal or ordinaries. And it left a bunch of people with magical powers. Powers being like the ability to use telekinesis or being able to ignite fires and things like that. There are also individuals who have what are called mundane powers, which is like the ability to turn invisible or basically be able to flicker in and out of walls and things like that. Depending on the intensity of your power, the higher your level is within the kingdom. And in this cruel irony of a kingdom, the thing is, for the individuals that did not survive the plague, the king has decided that they are weak and therefore do not deserve to live within the country. So he's systematically finding them and killing them. In the midst of all of this, there are trials that take place every year, basically talking about the Great Purge and how it's super important that we keep the elites elite, and people compete in these set of trials in honor of the purging, which basically allowed for all of the ordinaries to leave the kingdom. I know, absolutely terrible. In the midst of this, you have Peyton, who is an ordinary trying to pretend that she is a powerful psychic. And she inadvertently ends up saving the prince, who is the enforcer of the king and basically lives his life to remove people like herself from the equation. Now that she has saved the prince, however, the kingdom and her area of the kingdom have decided that she will go into the trials representing their group of individuals. And now you have poor Peyton trying to survive these trials and just make it through to the end without revealing that she's actually an ordinary, and therefore starting a manhunt after her. This book I thought was absolutely brilliant. This one I gave a 4 stars. Reckless continues the story after the ending of Powerless, where something insane happens and now Peyton's kind of on the run and being tracked down by the Enforcer. You get to see a lot more of the kingdom and a lot more neighboring kingdoms in this book, which was really fun. So I did enjoy this one quite a bit. This one doesn't have any trials. It's definitely adventure focused, and it is a lot of crazy things happening. The romance and the banter in this book were absolutely excellent. This was probably my favorite book in the series, and I ended up giving this one a 4.5. And then we have Fearless. Fearless is the final book in the story. Now, originally, I did like this book, but as I got further into this book, I did feel like some things were far-fetched and stretched out just a little too much for my liking. So I ended up giving this book a 3.5 stars instead, which surprised me just as much as I'm sure it's surprising you. But I do think overall the storyline does conclude beautifully. There's a lot of bows that are tied and I's that are dotted, T's that are crossed in this book. And I definitely think it was a fair ending to the series. I just don't feel like for the amount of love I had for the characters, the way that this book ended up developing, that I was thrilled about the way it went, but it was still an excellent story. So I ended up giving this one a 3.5. And then within this series, there's also the book Powerful. Now, one character that is repeated over and over and over in name only throughout the entire series is the character of Adana. Adana is Peyton's best friend who has been living in the slums with her. And this book is basically Adana's story as she's waiting for Peyton to end up in the kingdoms, and her little romance that takes place outside of the kingdoms with Makato, who happens to be an elite who is trying to stay hidden because he is targeted by the king as one of the elites that needs to be removed from the equation. I do think this story was quite beautiful. It's gut-wrenching. It's very, very fast-paced. The romance is super cute. And I think it was really, really beautiful to hear the story from Adana's point of view, because you don't get that much of her point of view in the actual books. And the friendship that she and Peyton have is truly very sweet. And for Peyton to reference this character as much as she does throughout the entire series, I do think this was a beautiful book. So I would definitely recommend reading the novella. I do think it adds to the story. And I ended up giving this little novella a 4 stars. Altogether, I would say the series is a 4-star read for me. I do think it's an excellent, excellent series. It's a lot of fun. It definitely keeps you on the edge of your seat and on the tiptoes. And it was just a great book series. And I was very, very thankful that I got to read them in April. Next up, the next series that I read in April is the Crimson Moth series. Now, I did not know how much I was going to love these books going into it. The original book, Heartless Hunter, came out last year. It came out in February of 2024, and I saw rave reviews on this book. I originally got it back in February of last year, and I did plan on reading it then until I realized it was only going to be a duology, and the author was actually releasing the second book this month. And so this actually came out in April as well. And so I decided it would be so much fun to finish the series during the course of this month. I think this series was absolutely brilliant. This is basically the story of enemies to lovers vibes and magic kingdoms. So within this kingdom, think like Salem witch trials. There's basically a group of people who are witches, and at one point the monarchy was basically run by corrupt witches, and so they were overthrown. And now there are witch hunters in the Blood Guard as well as within the aristocracy that are basically trying to remove witches from play, and they are slowly and systematically hunting down the witches in order to remove them. Our main female lead character happens to be a witch, but she is a good witch, and her goal is to basically save all the witches that have been inadvertently captured or wrongly accused after the fall of the Queen's reign. Now, throughout the course of this book, a lot of crazy things happen, and she ends up befriending a witch hunter in order to gain more information about where a witch might be kept in order to save her from death. Meanwhile, he befriends her under the suspicion that she may or may not be a witch. Inadvertently, as they're circling this dangerous tango, they end up creating feelings for each other, and it's just such a beautiful read. It is a beautiful love triangle that's taking place in this book as well, and this book definitely left me sobbing at the end, but I was very, very much ready to see what continued to happen.
Solid 4.5-star read for me. Then I had Rebel Witch. I did enjoy this one even more than Heartless Hunter. I thought this book was absolutely brilliant in the way that it was written. I loved the banter that's happening between the two characters. I love the even more high stakes that's taking place. I love the fact that we're leading towards a war that is on the brink, and they have to figure out how to circumvent this war that's coming and also simultaneously protect their interests, but also knowing that they have this romantic interest within one another and slowly starting to understand the motivations of the other person and why they ended up in the roles of Renegade Witch and Witch Hunter. I think the other cast of characters that are introduced in this book are absolutely excellent, and I loved seeing their roles in the story as well. And I just loved that it really showed, like, at the end of the day, who we are as human, who we are internally, what our intentions are, matters so much in terms of what ends up happening. So would definitely recommend Rebel Witch. This was, again, a solid 4.5-star read for me. I absolutely loved this book. So altogether, this is a 4.5-star series for me. We can round that up to a 5-star, honestly. It wasn't quite a 5, but it could have been there. So excellent series. Really, really enjoyed them. And it was perfect for my vibes and what I was looking for, because when I was reading these, it was also a little rainy and gloomy and all kinds of on and off weather changes that were happening with spring being here. And it was just so perfect to read. That completes all of the series that I read so far for this month, and that was a total of 16 books. I will list the names of the series in the description box along with the books that are within that series underlying that as well, almost like an outline. So if anyone's interested, that is available for you to see there. Outside of that, I read 2 other books. One is the 5th book in a series that I'm absolutely in love with, and it's that series right there, the Finlay Donnovan series. The Finlay Donnovan series is absolutely hilarious in my humble opinion. It's like cozy murder mystery vibes, but basically what ends up happening is there's a woman who just is going through divorce. She is getting sledgehammered by the lawyer and her ex-husband. She's single-handedly trying to raise her 2 children. She's also trying to write novels. Her caregiver is in the brink of quitting because her husband just tried to proposition her. And while all of this is happening, someone mistakenly decides that Finlay is actually the person to contact in order to get rid of a man, or AKA get rid of a body should you need them to. Inadvertently, without realizing it and thinking it was actually for a book deal, since Finlay is a novelist, she signs up for this, and it leads to a hilarious course of events that take place. And her sidekick Vero, who is the caregiver that I was talking about, who was thinking about leaving after her husband, the douchebag Steven, ends up pulling the rug on her, is just 100% in it to win it and completely crazy cuckoo. And the two of them together go on the craziest adventures and get themselves into the weirdest situations, and you are along for the ride, and it's absolutely phenomenal. Now, in this next book, which is the 5th one, it's Finlay Donnovan Digs Her Own Grave. At this point in the series, she is dating a detective. Correct. She is dating a detective, and she's absolutely enamored with him, in love with him, and both of them know that secrets are being held. She doesn't know how to let the detective in all the way into all the crazy things that she's been involved in with the mobs and the murders and all this other stuff. He, meanwhile, knows there's something going on, but doesn't quite know what it is, so he just wants to understand her a little bit better. Meanwhile, in the course of all of that's going on, Vero and her find herself in another tragic scenario when the feds basically show up at the door to arrest her husband because he has been framed for the murder of a woman, Penny's husband. And the belief is that this happened after Stephen and Penny had had a torrid affair. Now, in the midst of all of this, Finlay's like, that doesn't sound real. Like, yes, my husband's a cheating piece of garbage, but I don't think he committed murder. And so she goes off to try to figure out what actually happened. Now, in the midst of all of this, she also gets stuck with an elderly, crotchety grandma who is her next door neighbor. This is where the dead body was found in the previous book that leads to this one. And she basically can't get home. She just got released from prison. Her grandson just comes and drops her off at Finlay's house. And now Finlay is stuck with Mrs. Hatcherty, and she is beside herself, basically trying to take care of her 2 kids, also be there for Vero, who is, in great space and is now happily in a romance as well, while simultaneously nursing her own blooming romance, her novel career, as well as this crotchety old grandma. And in the midst of all of this, there might be a book deal that's being thrown her way to turn her series into television. But of course, the fear that Finlay has is a lot of what she's writing is based on real life events that have to do with actual dead bodies that have gone missing. And the last thing she needs is for someone to make the connection. So she's on this journey to free her husband when a bunch of crazy things happens. And eventually she is in a position where she may or may not have to dig her own grave. So if that sounds like it's a series that's worth considering for you, definitely do it. I absolutely adore the Finlay Donnovan series, and I will definitely continue to eat up every single book that Elle Cosimano releases. As of right now, I think there's a 7-book deal that's going on with the plan for 1 book release per year. So I absolutely adored this one, and I can't wait for the next one that comes out. There's also a novella with this series as well that talks about Vero's past, and that one was also really fun. From my understanding, that is Kindle or Audible only at this time. But again, great read for those that are interested in reading these stories and may want to know about Vero in a little bit more depth as well, who is the sidekick to Finlay's Batman. Okay, and then last but not least, the final book that I read this month was The God of the Woods. Now, this book did win the Lolly Award on Book of the Month. It was selected as the best book of the year to be published back in 2024. It also did get some of those category nominations on Goodreads as well. It's a very well celebrated book, and it's very, very popular. This particular, before I forget, this was a 4-star read for me. This book, I would say, I struggled with. I can understand why it has critical acclaims. I can understand why people absolutely love this book. I think there's so much depth to this book, so much intensity, so much to gain from reading this book. But I think that I struggled with this book in particular is that most of the characters are not redeemable. And that was really a struggle for me. I don't mind reading about a sociopathic character, and I don't mind reading about characters that kind of are disillusioned or end up completely degrading throughout the course of the story because of the choices they make. For example, like an Edgar Allan Poe novel. But I prefer it in that setting, and that's not quite this setting. This is more of a thriller story. I do think the ending was beautiful. I do think that there are 3 main female characters, in my humble opinion, that are beacons of hope and light in this book, and that would be Barbara, Judy, and TJ. However, I do think the other characters were very depressing to read. Another thing I will say with this book is, for me at least, the Audible was very difficult to follow, so I did end up having to physically read quite a bit of this book, and I did have to rewind a few times or reread a couple of sentences in the book itself just to make sure I was following the timeline, because it's 2 different timelines that are taking place, and then within those timelines, there's more timelines that are happening along the course of that as well. So basically, like, one of the timelines is following the story of the son, Bear, who has gone and disappeared. And then the second timeline is basically following the story of the current time, which is Barbara, the second daughter in the Van Laar family, has also gone missing. So the story basically jumps back and forth to when Bear's parents first met and Bear was conceived and what happened with Bear, as well as the timeline of Barbara going missing. So as you can imagine, within this storyline, you are following the active disappearance of Barbara and trying to figure out where she went, which means you're going along that murder mystery potential with these characters in the current time. But then you're also getting a full timeline relay of what happened leading up to Bear's mysterious disappearance as well. Added to this is the fact that this book is set against the time period when a serial killer in real life was actually out on the loose in the mountains. And at that time, a lot of campers were often told, like, please be careful, don't go out, because he was known to go after people that were around these campsites. He was eventually caught, and that was kind of the inspiration, from my understanding, for this story as well. So this serial killer is also somewhere in the background of everything that's going on. And as the story unfolds and you go through these 15 years in the first half of the novel, like the first part with Bear's disappearance, and then you're also going through the few months that have basically passed since Barbara's disappearance, or maybe a few weeks. That, again, a little confused there. I would honestly say the majority of the characters were not redeemable, and that was very, very frustrating for me. And I also think it was a lot of victim mentality and self-fulfilling prophecy of that victim mentality, which made it very, very difficult for me to be understanding towards the characters. However, this is an excellent book, and I do think if you're looking for something that's going to make you think, if you're looking for something that's a little bit different, if you're looking for something that is going to present a challenge and is just a fun thriller. This is a great book to read. It just wasn't the right book for me. So after giving that glowing review of this book, I do unfortunately have to say that this was only a 2.5 star for me. But again, it's not anything against Liz Moore or the story itself. It's simply the fact that when I was reading this book, these characters, because of the way that they're written and because so many of them are unreliable or just unredeemable, it was very hard for me to vouch for any of the characters, which then made it difficult for me to feel connected enough to the characters to fully plug into this story. I also feel like I was reading it at the beginning of the month when things were just a little bit more crazy and hectic around that time period. So that could have played into a little bit of a book slump vibe that was going on that may have also correlated to this. But I just felt like it wasn't the right book for me. But I will still say Liz Moore did write a genius book, and I can 100% understand why this won awards. So if you're looking for something that's like contemporary fiction, thriller adjacent, and it's also very interesting, very powerful, very unique cast of characters, and really brings into light like the idea of power and it going too far into someone's head or a family's head, this is definitely the book to read. Just wasn't the right fit for me. And that brings me to the conclusion of this video. If you guys made it this far, thank you so much for watching. That is everything I read in the month of April. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you have read any of these books as well, or if this inspired you to add any of them to your TBR list, definitely leave me a comment below. I am so thankful for every single one of you, and I cannot say it enough how thankful I am for this community that we are creating. For those of you that are new, if you enjoy the content, I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday, usually on bookish related content. And if you do want to be part of our fiction addicted family, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss out on the fun. And for those of you that are returning, thank you once again for being here. It is such a pleasure to be able to build this community with you guys. I truly enjoy every single one of your comments, and I cannot wait to continue growing on this reading journey with you all. Love you guys. Bye.